Hey, this is Chris. Hope you're doing well, and welcome to Popcorn Finance, the show where we discuss finance in about the time it takes to make a bag of popcorn. So, as you know, I've been testing out these extra episodes each week. I'm calling them Unpop Kernels, and why I came up with that random name is that sometimes in the main episode they're short, so that's the whole point of this podcast. But we don't get to everything we want to talk about. There's some kernels left in the bottom of that popcorn bag after you got it out the microwave. So, what we're going to do is we're going to pull some of those kernels out, some of those topics that maybe we didn't really get to address, and talk about it a little bit more here on this episode. So, really excited to have back again Keila Hill-Trawick. She's managing director at Little Fish Accounting, host of Fish Food, the podcast that I listen to because accounting is complicated. And we talked about kind of some things you should do to get ready for next tax season. But Keila, I wanted to ask you, I feel stressed when I do my taxes every year. I know a lot of people tell me they feel stressed when they do their taxes. Is this a normal thing? Do we just all feel stressed? Or is it just us who are doing something wrong or something?
No. Yeah, I would say almost everyone feels stressed. Like the number of people that send me emails to work with us where I'm like, what do you want to get out of this relationship? And they're like, not go to jail. I'm like, you're not going to jail. I think a combination of not really understanding taxes, that we have a tax code that intentionally to some extent makes it really hard so that you have to pay people to get your taxes done. And then the fact that most people don't know how taxes work just kind of jumbles up to this. All of a sudden, every year I have this deadline. Nobody's really explaining to me what things mean. I sign off on my return. As long as I don't owe a lot, I'm not asking a lot of questions. It's common, not to mention the fact that most people don't learn anything about taxes. Like,
Nope.
We don't take classes on them. They don't teach it in high school. Like, why wouldn't you be stressed, really?
And, I mean, part of me is like, should there be a tax class in high school? But then I'm like, does it change too much that it's not gonna be relevant, or like would something like that be helpful? I know there's always talk about doing financial literacy classes in high school, but should there be something focused on taxes since it's like you said, ridiculously crazy?
I think even if there was, as part of financial literacy scope, there was a piece to really help you to understand how taxes work, like the description that we gave in the earlier episode. I think it just feels like a black hole for most people. They get paid throughout the year, and then suddenly at the end of the year, the IRS and the state are going to take some money from me. And I think if there was a better understanding of like, they have already decided what percentage of your check they're going to need. You just didn't pay enough or paid too much. It would be helpful and go a long way to people getting a better understanding of what they should be doing throughout the year to prepare, but also so that it doesn't feel like they're taking money. It's really just settling up the difference of we say you owe this much. Did you over or underpay throughout the year? And thinking about the taxes that come out of your check as prepayments. I think when you think of it that way, it feels like you're going to match against something down the line, as opposed to every time I get paid, y'all just take this random amount out of my account.
Yeah, and it's like, even too, I think what adds to the complexity is like, say both of us, we make the same amount of money, right? Say we work the same job, we make the same amount of money. We still can't even go and fill out our W-4 the same way because maybe I got something slightly different than you have going on. Maybe, you're married and you have a partner who makes more money than my partner, or vice versa. Or I have a kid, you don't have a kid. Like, there's like all these little things start to shift it and make it like this thing that you can't easily just say, go to your friend or your family and say, hey, what are you doing? And maybe I'll just do the same thing, because that could lead to problems if you just copy what someone else is doing.
Absolutely. There's credits and deductions and other things that you might have access to or not have access to, especially if your life doesn't change a whole lot year over year, though. You can look at last year's tax return and just ask your preparer, get a general sense of like, what do these numbers mean and where do they come from? And then know which things change. So a perfect example is like the standard deduction. It's going to change a little bit, but the standard deduction is always going to be there. What does that mean for your tax return so you can see what you should be backing out? I would say too, a lot of people have more simple tax situations than they realize. And so they'll get so caught up in like, am I doing the right things? And it's like, you have a W-2 and a mortgage. You only got a couple of forms. It's really straightforward for you to do, and not shaming people for using one of the services like a TurboTax or an H&R Block. Everybody doesn't need the complications of needing their own tax preparer, but I still want everybody to feel empowered to understand what their taxes mean so that they're not in the dark.
No, okay. See, I think there is some shame sometimes, like, oh, you go to an accountant, you go to use one of these services, but I think it's in general, I think it's always a bad thing to have any type of shame around money, because that just makes you not ask questions. So
Very much
it's
so.
really helpful to hear things like that. So hopefully when people who are listening to this, you maybe makes you feel a little bit better. Like everyone's going to need help because this stuff is complicated. But like you said, it's okay to get the help you need to kind of check in, get things in order, make sure you're just doing things as you should. Because you said for most people, it's not as complicated as we think it will ultimately end up being.
Yeah, I would say most people who are working a W 2 job, who have a spouse or a partner that also has a W 2 job that is not doing anything complicated like stock payments or crazy investments or real estate or something like that. If you work at a job that pays you a paycheck and you have something simple like a house and or charitable contributions but nothing extravagant outside of that, generally one of those services will do you just fine. At the same time, pay for what makes you feel comfortable. So if you feel
Mm.
confident, I put these 3 forms in, they know how to deal with those forms, don't worry about paying extra. If it still makes you scared, find a tax professional that can really assist you in a way to make sense.
Mm. A question that popped into my mind while you were speaking, because you mentioned that looking at last year, if nothing's changed, you kind of can use that as like a guide. So is that for most people? Like, say, for example, I didn't change jobs, I didn't get married or divorced, I didn't have any kids, nothing really significant financially happened. Like this year is probably, I say this year's gonna look pretty much the same as
Mm-hmm.
last year. Can you then use last year as like your base to make little tweaks and changes and kind of be able to judge what those changes will end up
Yeah.
doing?
So let's say last year you made 75K, right? And the, ignore these numbers because they don't really mean anything. But let's say that of that 75K, you paid $13,000 in taxes and you got a refund.
Hmm.
This year, you might get most of the way through the year and say, how much did they take out in taxes? If they took more than that 13,000 and nothing else really changed, you can probably expect that you're going to get another refund. If they took significantly less, you want to match that up to your tax burden for last year and say, should I be
Hmm.
putting some money to the side? Because last year they said my tax burden was 10,000 and I had 13,000 taken out of my check. This year, I'm expecting I made about the same. It's probably going to be 10,000 again, but they've only taken out 8. So I need to make sure that I cover that difference because I expect the amount of tax I owe to be the same. I want to make sure that I have covered that amount throughout the year. So that's a good baseline. You can also look at, was I able to itemize last year based on what I had and I didn't move and I live in the same house and I didn't refinance or do anything different. I can probably use those numbers and just see if I'm on track to meet those same numbers this year.
Okay. That's a good way to look at it. And I think too, sometimes we forget, like this is me going back to like payroll mode here, that on your paycheck stuff, it shows you year to date how much money has been taken out for state, federal, Social Security, Medicare. You can see all those numbers tallied there. So you can
Mm-hmm.
also use that as a way of like, okay, I paid this much last year, nothing really changed. This is where I'm at now, and kind of see where you're at and get a standing versus trying to go back and do some weird math to figure out what you've done so far.
Exactly. And hopefully it leads you to less of a surprise. I don't ever want clients or people to go into tax season and be like, I don't know how much I owe. 1,000,
Mm.
8,000. You'll let me know when you do my return. You at least have some sense of like, I'm probably going to get a refund or I'm probably going to owe a little bit, but I'm prepared for that. It won't be a
Mm.
complete shock to me when my return is filed.
Okay. Well, I appreciate this talk. I'm still probably going to be a little stressed, right? Like I feel like it's ingrained in me now after all these years. I got to work on getting that stress when it comes to taxes out of my system. But I think this conversation hopefully is helpful to other people listening because it was helpful to me, kind of calm my nerves a little bit thinking about this. So thank you again for coming back for this extra episode. And of course, I want to let people know if they want to connect with you, if they want to hear more from you, learn more from you, where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything about the business and working with us is at littlefishaccounting.com.
Mm.
We've got one-on-one services as well as free resources like the blog and our podcast, Fish Food, which we love very much. And if you want to connect with us on social media, we're at Little Fish Accounting on Instagram.
All right, perfect. So that'll all be in the show notes if you want to go check that out. I highly recommend it. And Keila, as always, it's great talking with you.